Hi there, I'm Emily Muhlstein with the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, and this is a public hearing video on Spiny Lobster Amendment 13, which considers modifying gear requirements and also the cooperative management procedure between the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and the Gulf Council. So we'll start with a little bit of background on the bully net fishery. So landings with bully net gear actually only make up about 3% of total spiny lobster landings. However, participation in that bully net fishery has steadily increased in recent years. Unfortunately, there is little to no information indicating the bully net harvest that occurs in the federal waters. Recently, constituents expressed some concern to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission about increased participation in the bully net fishery. So on May 1st of 2017, the FWC took the following actions. They updated the definition of commercial harvester, created a bully net permit for commercial harvest, required vessels used for commercial bully netting to be marked appropriately, and also prohibited the simultaneous possession of bully net gear and dive gear. Additionally, prior to Spiny Lobster Amendment 10, which was finalized in 2011, the National Marine Fisheries Service had the authority to implement state-proposed rules in the federal waters off of Florida if those rules were consistent with the federal requirements and the councils didn't object. Currently, changes proposed by the FWC have to go through the council via a framework, action, or a full amendment. So the council's looking at moving back to how it was prior to 2011. So the council is here to consider aligning the federal regulations in the federal waters off of Florida with Florida state regulations, as well as reestablishing the procedure for enhanced cooperative management between the federal agencies and the state of Florida. There are 3 actions being considered. The first, Action 1, considers Florida state bully net permit, marking requirements, and gear prohibitions in the federal waters off of Florida. Action 2 looks at commercial spiny lobster bully net and also dive gear trip limits. And Action 3 takes a look at cooperative management procedure for the federal and Florida state agencies for spiny lobster management. So the first alternative is the no action alternative. The second alternative, which is the council's preferred, would align federal regulations so that they're consistent with Florida regulations for spiny lobster commercial harvesters using bully net gear by implementing the following. It would require commercial bully net vessels in the federal waters off of Florida to have bully net permit from Florida. It would require vessels to be marked with a harvester's Florida bully net permit number using reflective paint or other reflective material. It would prohibit commercial bully net vessels from having trap pullers on board. And it would also prohibit the simultaneous possession of bully net gear and any underwater breathing apparatus. So moving to Action 2, which considers bully net and dive gear trip limits. So right now, there are no commercial daily vessel harvest or possession limits for bully net or dive gear in the federal waters off of Florida. There is a commercial daily vessel harvest and possession limit for spiny lobster harvested by bully net gear of 250 per person in Florida state waters, and that same 250 possession and harvest limit is in place for dive gear in Florida state waters off of Brevard, Dade, Monroe, Collier, and Lee counties. The council is considering vessel limits for both dive and bully net gear in the federal waters off of the state of Florida. The first alternative is the no action alternative. The second alternative, which is a preferred, would establish a commercial daily harvest and possession limit of 250 spiny lobster per vessel harvested by bully net in the federal waters off of the state of Florida. Alternative 3 is also a council preferred, and that would establish a 250 daily vessel harvest and possession limit of spiny lobster harvested by diving in the federal waters off of Brevard, Dade, Monroe, Collier, and Lee counties in Florida. And finally, we move to Action 3, which considers enhancing cooperative management between the federal agencies and the state of Florida. Currently, the council must develop an amendment to the fishery management plan for spiny lobster if they want to establish regulations consistent with new Florida regulations. The council is considering allowing Florida to request a change to the spiny lobster federal regulations through the abbreviated NMFS rulemaking process rather than going through the entire council process. Alternative 1 is the no action alternative. Preferred Alternative 2 would establish an enhanced cooperative management process that allows Florida to request changes to spiny lobster federal regulations through the National Marine Fisheries Service rulemaking process. So the Council would like to hear your comments before taking final action on this amendment. You can either submit your comments on our online comment form by following this link, or you can simply email your comments to gulfcouncil@gulfcouncil.org. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this presentation and send us your thoughts.